G'day friends and foes, Arjay here with Arjay's This Is Not Legal Advice, or TINLA for short, and nor is it legal advice, it's opinion only, blah blah blah. So, I've heard that apparently Fanos has been arrested and charged with incitement, and one other person. There was a post that was I forget the name, but it was like Rise Up Melbourne, Rise Up Victoria on Twitter, and it said rumours are that Fanos has been arrested. That's Fanos Panagnides for all those just joining us. Hello Sharon. So then they had another link where it has a confirmation, it says like confirmation, and it's got a news reporter saying that an Epping man and another man, I assume the other person is probably Raphael Fernandez. I did write on Raphael's wall after seeing that he hasn't posted anything today, or any main posts that I saw at least, and that has not been confirmed yet, but I assume that it was Raphael who got arrested with Fanos. And basically the charges are incitement, of course, which is a very serious offence, an indictable offence, despite that protesting isn't even really an offence at all. But has anyone else heard any information about it? And just before I click live, I did see a message from Christina Bebic saying that Fanos has been arrested and released, but I've not seen any more information about it. So how are you all going anyway? I'm just about to go to the gym. I've joined a gym. Yeah, so Fanos was arrested apparently, Sharon, and one other person, which presumably they would have arrested Raphael at the same time, as even though it might not be reality, it does seem that Raphael's Fanos's like right-hand man, number two man, whichever way you want to call it. Yeah, I got a free gym pass for a week, and they got a sauna and a steam room as well. So breathe in the vapor to burn out any coronavirus or whatever. Isn't it ridiculous that gyms were closed down during the COVID lockdowns? It's probably the most cleanest place you can get. Everyone wipes alcohol wipes all over the seats and whatever. They've got sauna and whatever. Yeah, so you can get arrested for planning things, Joe. But a problem is, of course, that the COVID directions in Victoria are probably not law anyway. And I did quickly go through with the Victorian government gazettes. It's a bit annoying. Instead of it being in Queensland, they do it like once every week, and you can just do Control F to try and find things, i.e. search for terms like Chief Health Officer, Chief Medical Officer, what else? COVID directions, Young for Queensland, because Dr. Jeanette Young does it. Things are okay, Clayton. Oh, that's sad, Anna. So presumably you're in Victoria, if I've never asked before. So she can't even go to the doctor or an osteopath. It's so ridiculous. So GG says they've confiscated all of his electronics. Tristan's asking, am I a lawyer? So I'm not a lawyer, but I do have a Juris Doctorate law degree. So that's one of several types of Doctor of Law. And basically I would have been a lawyer by now if it wasn't for COVID directions. After you get a law degree, you have to do what's called practical legal training, and that includes 75 days worth of supervised practice as well as coursework. There is an alternative through the College of Law at least, where you can do a third course, and that takes away 60 days of supervised practice, but then it takes you 2 months to do that extra course anyway. But obviously if you can't get a supervised practice placement. So from there, then you apply to admission with the Supreme Court of the state or the territory, and then here's puffy again, looks like fire in the light. And once you get admitted, then you have, for Queensland at least, another 1.5 years worth of supervision. There is also a separate option where you don't actually do practical legal training as in a course, but you do basically 2 years of supervised practice, which is a clerkship, but not many people do that. Exactly, Lorraine points out that, wait for the car to go past, Lorraine points out that they, as in the government, want us all fat and unhealthy. And of course, you know, if people are morbidly obese, then obviously corona would affect them more. Hi Annie as well. So Tristan says, what advice do you give to anyone trying to get to the protests or get arrested at the protests this Saturday, matey? So as I'm not a qualified lawyer, and it would be negligent even if I was just to give random advice without considering all of the circumstances, and I can't give legal advice, but what state are you in as a point of interest, Tristan? So Ibby says, isn't innocent until guilty. Yeah, so, you know, you get charged and you still get to go to court and whatever. And I do personally in Queensland have a court case going, which now I need to appeal it to the Supreme Court. You cannot appeal from the Magistrates Court to the Supreme Court directly, so it had to go through the District Court, where again the judge in the District Court, like the magistrate before her, buggered up the law, I submit, and claimed that, or agreed with the police officer who sued me in the Magistrates Court to prevent me lawfully protesting, agreed that the District Court has no jurisdiction for appeals from the Magistrates Court under the Peaceful Assembly Act in Queensland, which I submit is garbage and I submit is wrong. And also the District Court Act in about section 113 prevents appeals directly to the Supreme Court's Court of Appeal from the Magistrates Court anyway. And it also specifically states that the District Court has all of the powers of the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal being the Supreme Court's appellate or supervisory part. So they've got, you know, the court's original jurisdiction, then you've got the appellate jurisdiction. And jurisdiction, of course, is the power for a court to hear a case. So therefore, if the District Court is vested with all of the power of the Court of Appeal, then of course they have jurisdictional power. And also besides that, you also have a thing called the writ of certiorari, or certiorari, or, you know, who speaks Latin nowadays. Some people say they don't pronounce C as a S sound or a soft C, but as a K. But anyway, one of the purposes of that is to enable a supervisory court to, what do you call that, quash a decision or fix an error on the record, basically allow an appeal where there's no other right to appeal, and there's other rights to appeal anyway, I argue. So just having a look, Sharon says that's so wrong. Lee's from the prison state of Victoria. Hi Chris as well. Magali, hi brother, hi back to you. Tristan's in Victoria. So, I'll just quickly check. So, with Victoria, so if I was in Victoria, which I'm not, so this is just a moot point, I'm just saying what I would personally do in the circumstances, is that I would turn up to protests, and, you know, it depends where though, because apparently there's a ring of steel around, you know, certain areas now. But, you know, I think it's a very important thing, and like I said, I'm not there, I'm just saying what I would personally do if I was there. So basically, in a big scheme of things, if no one turns up now, then, you know, Fanos did all he did, and Sol did all he did. That's Solahin Millen, sorry, and Raphael, or whoever the other person was that was arrested, was all in vain. But if, a whole heap of people turn up, even though they, a lot of them probably will get fines and bashed up by the police, they're saying about the riot police aren't there to prevent riots, they're there to create riots. So they'll pick on, women, children, old people to get reactions from people, so things do go violent. I even saw today a video from the German rally where they supposedly had about 4 million people in Berlin, or maybe it was one of their smaller rallies in a different German city, and they got a poor lady on the ground, and the police officer, dressed up in his stormtrooper uniform, starts punching her in the spine. And obviously there's people around yelling at them to stop, but if they then attack the police, then that would be really, really bad in terms of, everyone starts getting their bones broken, I should say, and whatever. But obviously Fanos, if he is released, which I'll take Christina's word for it that he has been, and also whoever the second person that was arrested, and this is after Sol was arrested a few days ago anyway, but obviously they have bail conditions, and if they break those bail conditions, it's very serious. So it's like when I was in a magistrate's court and a police officer, who happens to be a police sergeant, illegally, I submit, and everything I say is I submit, and I do that for a reason. It's very important to qualify one's words, but to prevent me saying it a million times, I just say everything's my submissions or my opinion only, blah, blah, blah. But basically, she illegally took me to the magistrate's court to prevent me from launching my political party, Reset Parliament, which you can go to resetparliament.com and see, what the website is currently, even though a little bit of it's out of date. It's got like a political archives part, etc. But the point is, she prevented me from launching my political party, and was also protesting the illegal, unlawful, unconstitutional and inoperative COVID directions in Queensland, as well as things like, mandatory vaccinations. If you want to have a vaccine, good on you. If you don't, then you shouldn't be forced to do it. It also goes against normal medical law, where you have to have fully informed consent. But, how can I put it? So the police officer took it to court. She also did not have mediation, which is required under the Act in Queensland, which is a Peaceful Assembly Act. And then the magistrate erred or made an error by making it illegal for me to protest anywhere in the universe. It didn't even say, anywhere in Queensland. It's anywhere. And I do live on the Gold Coast, which is a border city anyway, so I couldn't even go across to, Tweed Heads and protest there. But the point is, because the court made that determination, if I then went and protested anywhere on that day, which was the 31st of May, then that would be really, really bad news for me. So it'd be contempt of court, I could be chucked in jail, I could have it that, hey, look, this guy's not a fit and proper person to be a lawyer when, I finally finish that process because he goes around breaking a law. But, in a way, on Saturday, it could be a defining moment in history where, you look and show your kids old footage, maybe you've been arrested in it, who knows, maybe you got your fine on a little plaque on the wall or whatever, and you're like, hey, look, I was there. I was there when we stood against the government who was doing massive overreach, massive tyranny. They were going to force us to, get injected with monkey viruses, like the UK AstraZeneca/Oxford University vaccine is a monkey virus, an adenovirus, and they genetically modify that virus to make it go into your cells and produce basically the protein spikes of coronavirus. as in SARS-CoV or SARS-CoV number 2, the current coronavirus, because of course, 15 to 25% of normal head colds are coronaviruses anyway. But, these facts get buried. It's just like, there's this new virus from some guy ate a bat in China, and even though they've been eating bats in China for millennia, that all of a sudden this one time that, there was a super secret virus made, which, maybe it is a secret super virus, but maybe not from being eaten. The Wuhan level 4 lab in China, and that's the highest level of containment you can have. They deal with super viruses, biological weapons, obviously, even though no one has biological weapons, like Fort Detrick in the USA and, some other locations. But, they happen to be doing research on chimeric, or chimera, if you want to call it that, so cross-species viruses, coronaviruses, particularly from bats. But it's nothing to do with that. It's a fish market that's like 100 metres down the road. So Clayton says, I feel for you, Lee. He's not in Victoria, but he does have family there. Yeah, I even heard on the radio just, half an hour ago or something, that they're talking about farmers where they've got their little kiddies in boarding school and they can't even see their kiddies because the lady they had on there was from, where was she from? I don't know, somewhere near Gundawindi or somewhere like that. And her son was in Toowoomba in a boarding school, and they would have to get someone to travel with the son to Sydney, back to Gundawindi Airport or something like that, Airstrip, and then taking him back, they would have to put him in hotel quarantine and go with him for 2 weeks in Queensland, flying to Sydney and then from Sydney to Brisbane. It's so freaking ridiculous, putting it nicely. So Sharon says should be happily arrested. She'll be in Brisbane on the 5th. So just so you know, I am having my own protest, which is with Reset Parliament, my new political party, on the 5th at 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. If no one turns up, it might finish an hour early, so that people can go to the other protests in Brisbane. That way, hopefully it boosts their numbers anyway. But my protest is slightly different. I'm not, planning protests with anyone or anything like that. And I've put in authorizations for my protests, and the police still have not answered, which is sort of surprising, because normally when I've done it before in Brisbane, say, I would put in the form, say, on a Saturday, Sunday, whatever, and then I'd be called on Monday or possibly even Tuesday, and then they would either approve it or object to it. But that hasn't happened, so I assume that they've seen my last video, and basically, they're buggered whichever way they go. They can either not oppose it, in which case then they're authorised, and some of them are for multiple dates and even extending to April next year. And the law in Queensland is, if it doesn't get opposed within 5 days, business days, then they're deemed authorised protests. So therefore the police are acquiescing to the numbers that I had. I put different versions just in case, they had objections to some and not to others. I'm also putting in for COVID direction exemptions with Dr. Jeanette Young, which I suppose and I imagine, based on previous attempts to try and get them, that they'll just be ignored. But, that's beside the point. So some of the versions I did, I put 31 people. You can currently have 30 people outdoors, last time I checked, for the Gold Coast, which 31's one extra person. But, obviously if 30's okay, then why shouldn't 31 be okay? And then also with persons, if you have 2 children there, as an example, does that count as one person like it does on a boat? And then I also have another version where I put 100 people. So the police can either oppose it, and then that gives me grounds to challenge the whole COVID directions in Queensland, so long as the magistrate has a fair hearing, which I was denied last time, I submit. But they either do that or they acquiesce and they're saying, hey, look, you can do that. Hi, Lorraine. Lorraine says it's supposed to be like that, and thank you for what you do. Thank you, Lorraine. My mum's name was Lorraine. It's a very special name to me. So Lee is in central Victoria, but move more freely. But she's nervous what she does and hates going to the post office. Magali, brother, you should do a mohawk. Yeah, so the problem is I got like a bald patch here, so I got to grow my hair long and either grow a wig or maybe make the mullet popular again. My hair doesn't pop out so much when it weighs itself down. Now this can be like a beauty and fashion channel too. So Ibby says the 5th hasn't happened yet, so he's innocent. Yeah, but if you're planning something or encouraging someone to, say, rob a bank, not that Fanos would, and really, the incitement laws are supposed to be for very serious crimes, really, then, then you can get in trouble for it. The rain's in the Gippsland. Most of the shops say no mask, no entry. Tony's also from Victoria. Sharon asked, do I know Mac Linden? Not off the top of my head, but I do have a thing where I never remember people's surnames, pretty much. It's like someone called me the other day and said something about Mick Allen. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't know people's surnames, but I know a lot of Micks. Or Mike Allen, actually, it was, sorry. Sorry to Mike there. But, I don't remember people's surnames, generally speaking. Oiram is from Albany, but they want to go to any protest. Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, Dave Oneglio had an idea for protesting in support of Victoria because Victorians couldn't protest. So he picked Cascade Gardens here on the Gold Coast at Broadwater, which is used to be called Jupiter's Casino, now it's called Star Casino. And also the Gold Coast Convention and Exhibition Centre, where I just did a candidates breakfast thing. When was that? I don't know, maybe Monday last week, possibly. But anyway, he also had the idea, hey, if you can't make it to that particular place, and so that everyone can be involved, besides he wasn't encouraging anyone from Victoria to do it, of course, but go protest at your local war memorial. You've got all these people that fought and died for us, for our freedoms, yet what freedoms do we have now? And I also suggest, hey, look, maybe you can go to a court and protest out the front of a court, even though it's a Saturday, so it won't be open. Or, if you happen to have a governor's house or something like that, or a governor general's house, And, of course, I'm not suggesting anyone goes against the social distancing garbage, despite that it's not law, at least in Queensland. And I submit that it's unconstitutional anyway and goes against even, valid federal legislation. So as I said the other day, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but you have things like the Australian Human Rights Commission Act 1986, and that puts in domestic law international treaties like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Part of that has, hey, look, you have the right to protest, the right to no forced medications, the right to and with protests it's usually called lawful assembly or peaceful assembly, and of course, everyone should hope that it's peaceful, even though I suspect that, maybe the right squads might make it not peaceful. But the point is, and that's not against every riot police person, that's just, a a generalisation, an unwritten rule that, you know, often the riot police cause riots, supposedly. Anyway, so basically through section 109 of the Constitution, that says that any federal legislation, and it doesn't say that is valid, but of course it has to be valid, overrides state legislation. So you might have in Victoria, you know, some commissar policy. This is the United Soviet Socialist Republic of Victoria, and it is hereby banned that anyone can protest, or something like that. But that is overridden by the federal legislation anyway, without even getting into constitutional things. So, oops, just trying to scroll through the comments. Sandy's from Bordertown. Is Bordertown an actual town name, or is it just a town on the border like Albury-Wodonga? Or you just pointing out about Oiram, sorry if I mispronounced your name, being from a border town. Hi Car, or K. Craig says, if the police arrest you, maintain your right to silence, sign nothing, seek legal advice. You know, that's good advice. It's not legal advice, but, you know, there is a saying, never talk to police. But then, you know, there are some exceptions to that. So, for instance, in Queensland, as an example, if you are reasonably suspected of breaking the law, then the police can ask for your name and address. So if you look up the criminal code in sections 40 and 41, it says a bit about that. They also have, you know, additional rights to prevent riot, and not only in the criminal code, you also have the Summary Offences Act, section 10A, which covers what unlawful assembly is, and basically it's 3 or more people that are being a bunch of arse-wipes. Sorry for swearing, but, you know, it's time to use French. You know, the French were out there. My mum used to always say when she swore, sorry about the French. But anyway, so, you know, the French were standing up with the yellow vest for a long, long time before this coronavirus. But the point is that, you know, if you're not in a group of 3 people and you're not trying to intimidate or harass or bully people or threaten them, then for Queensland, then that's not unlawful assembly, as defined by section 10A of the Summary Offences Act. Lee says, thanks for my thoughts. Brian is in northeast Victoria, pretty much free range, but you still got to wear the face mask nappies apparently. Someone ended up dying. Who died? K or Car? I'm not sure how to pronounce it, sorry. Clayton says, absolutely, the police will try to trick people into incriminating themselves. Yes, of course they do. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of good cop, bad cop. So, you know, you'll have some really bad, nasty police officer, and then the saviour one comes in and just like, oh, you know, oh, we just want to get you out of here, and, you know, oh, sorry about the sergeant, but if you just tell us X, Y, Z, you know, dob so-and-so in, then we can let you go. Something like that. So that's good cop, bad cop. You also have a thing called kettling that not many people know about. So just say if you got streets like this, and say it's like a crossroad, and you got a bunch of protesters in the middle, the police can make little lines across here, 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 and here, and just keep you there for, you know, hours, days, whatever. So, you know, if anyone is protesting and peacefully protesting and, you know, following COVID directions in terms of, you know, 1.5 metres spacing or whatever, and, you know, groups of 2 if you're in Victoria apparently, or groups of 10 or groups of 20 or whatever, then, you know, it might be a good idea to pack a backpack with some food in it and water, especially if it is a hot day. So, and, you know, take a hat with you and whatever. Try and not go in your bikini, even though I'm sure the videos will look cooler if all the ladies are in bikinis, and for the ladies if all the men are in Speedos. But, you know, if you're stuck in the sun for 5 hours, then you might regret that. Joe asked, is it not self-defense? So by that, do you mean protesting in terms of the government's taking away our rights so we're allowed to defend those rights? Sharon says, the police have their own ABN number in Australia and can and will be sued individually by thousands of people. Yeah, so with the ABN thing, that refers to claims that police are really a private company, and also, you know, Australia is a private company traded on the US Securities and Exchange Commission, Stock Exchange, Edgar database stuff. Just because someone has an ABN, and I know someone's going to bring up a certain court case involving trains in Queensland, but it does not mean it is a private company. And the point of ABNs, even for, you know, government bodies or bodies politic or government agencies, is about accountability and, you know, making a paper trail, really. So just say if you make, I don't know, batons. You've got a company and you make batons and tasers and whatever for the police. So you need to be accountable for taxes or whatever. So you sell the batons to the police for $10 million, then they need to have an ABN just so it can be traced. So really there should be another terminology being like AGN or something, Australian government number. That would make more sense. Demetra asks, is Fanos arrested? Apparently he was arrested earlier today and has been released, and someone else was arrested at the same time, which I take it to be Raphael. I have asked Raphael to try and just on his wall, because I didn't see him posting for a day, and just asked, hey, if you're arrested, good luck or something, and I hadn't received a response by the time I did this video. And also back to what Sharon was saying about the police can be sued individually. Yes, they can. So within, how can I put that? So traditionally, just say if you're in a taxi and a taxi crashes, but the taxi driver has not much money to their name, and, you know, you're all mangled, you need $10 million to, you know, modify your house and have a permanent carer and all this other stuff. And imagine there's no insurance, because otherwise that just complicates things. So someone could instead sue the taxi company that would be more likely to have money. So that's called vicarious liability. Within vicarious liability, even though there's some odd cases, like there's two cases in particular that are both landmark cases where basically barmaids got pissed off with someone and like smashed a glass or threw a glass at someone, and in one of the cases, even though the facts are nearly identical, the pub was responsible, and in the other one it was just the barmaid, and one of the barmaids' names was something like Ruby Emerald Sapphire Deaton or something like that. But anyway, so with vicarious liability, you also have people like Paul Burton, the pastor of Ubuntu Church in Newcastle, and he is personally suing Michael Cooch-Trotter and also whoever else it was. And then the state of New South Wales tried taking over, saying, hey, look, you know, vicarious liability, you're not going to sue Michael Cooch-Trotter personally. And then Paul argued, hey, look, within vicarious liability, people have to work within the scope of their employment. And he did not, according to my understanding of what Paul's put forward. So therefore, I'm suing him personally. So again, yeah, well, I better skip that little part. It's got a little secret thing somewhere. Bruno points out that he was released now. Does anyone know if it was Raphael who was the second person arrested today? And of course there was Sol Milanen, sorry, I forget how to pronounce his surname, who was arrested the other day, and his interview is up on the internet. Just scrolling through. So Sandy says, so what? Soldiers died for our freedom. Please don't tell people this. It's not serious. And then there's a YouTube link. Obviously, I can't go to the YouTube link to know what that link is or exactly what you're talking about. all of a sudden I just lost a whole heap of messages, so I can't scroll on them. Skip from that message to Eugene's who needs leaders, just turn up. Exactly, you don't really need leaders, and if you do have leaders, then that's a vulnerability, of course, as well as, you know, there can be some scumbaggy people that get made leaders and mislead people, lead them astray. So it's like when Ron Paul was running for president last, US doctor, and he used to be an obstetrician, delivered more than 4,000 babies. His son Rand Paul is also a doctor, but ophthalmologist or an eye doctor of some description. But it was pointed out at the time that, hey, look, you know, there was a real risk of Dr. Ron Paul being murdered, being assassinated, and he was for ending the Federal Reserve Bank, which in the USA is a private bank owned by about 12 other banks. And basically, even though they're called federal, there's nothing federal about them, in terms of people assume that federal means it's government. It's like Federal Express, FedEx, is a private company. But anyway, so it was pointed out at the time, hey, it's a weakness to have a leader, or, you know, everyone's looking up to the leader. How do you kill a snake? You chop its head off. So we all need to become leaders. We all need to educate ourselves. So just looking through some more comments. Thought police. So she's talking about thought police. I don't know what the YouTube link is. I can't see those. Otherwise it'll cut out, I imagine. So what happened, Demetra, was there was someone notified me, a Twitter page called something like Rise Up Melbourne, Rise Up Victoria, said, hey, it seems that Fanos has been arrested. So then I went to that page on Twitter, and then it has, I believe that Fanos has been arrested, and then later on it's got confirmation. It's got a news article where they're saying an Epping man, and you know, Fanos says in his videos that he's from Epping, and someone from some other place in Victoria has been arrested for incitement over these protests, and apparently he's been let out. So Lucy's asking who was the magistrate, so presumably that's about my own case. I'd rather not say that, of course, just in case someone wants to try and cause trouble and, you know, email the court and say, yo, your magistrate's a douchebag or something like that. That would not be helpful. So Lee's pointing out about the Biosecurity Act 2015, particularly sections 80, 88 and 95. The law's been broken. So that's by the government. So again, you have section 109 of the Constitution, that valid federal legislation overrides state legislation, and the state legislation, to the extent of that inconsistency, is inoperative. So again, that's about that, i.e. that you need control orders, and the control orders have to be, you know, specific written orders that they have to say, hey, look, Joe Smith, you have contracted, you know, TB, tuberculosis, so you have to stay at home for 3 months or whatever. And that doesn't happen with the general blanket ban. You also have things like proportionality and whatnot. Lee's pointing out the Nuremberg Code. So of course that was after World War II, when German scientists were supposed to be like doing, what do you call that, medical experiments on people, so you can't do that anymore. Sandy's saying you need soldiers, you need to fight, so lawfully fight, of course. Constitutional rights, about courts being illegal and treasonous of the Constitution. Lucy says about fighting for our children's futures. Lee posts another YouTube link that I can't see what it is at the moment. Demetra, people get out there because they will destroy our children and grandchildren. And just scrolling through some more. So Sharon says there's a house in Ipswich where there's signs put out everywhere for 2 years about corruption of magistrates, politicians, police officers, and she'll try and get a photo. That'll be interesting. Dimitra told Fanos to hide. You know, maybe him being arrested actually makes him a martyr and makes it that more people will come out. It's like Daniel Andrews is releasing supposedly a roadmap on Sunday after the protest, and a lot of people are saying, oh, that's because they'll make it really harsh to blame the protesters and say, you know, we have to have another 2 weeks of you know, gulag lockdown because everyone's going to get sick or whatever. But maybe he's actually doing it for a different reason, in terms of hoping that no one turns up to the protests, because everyone thinks that if they all stay at home and be good boys and girls, that the government won't be so tyrannical. Sandy says vaccine not happening, duty under Magna Carta to rebel is happening. So again, that's about lawful rebellion, which is Article or Clause 61 of Magna Carta. So again, one day I'm going to do a proper video on Magna Carta as well as a Bill of Rights and whatever. Basically, though, as a teaser or preview, the first Magna Carta was written in 1215 and the barons forced the king to sign it. Some people claim that therefore means that it wasn't a real contract because it was done under duress. But then a counter argument to that is every peace treaty is done under duress. Also, then you had different other versions until 1297. That was the first parliamentary version. That's the version that I guess the Australian government recognises, and the state governments in Australia, which does no longer have the lawful rebellion part. So it used to be that you get 25 barons, so barons include lords and ladies and dames and whatever. I think a dame is a baron, or is a dame a female knight? But anyway, that 25 barons could deliver a petition to the government saying, hey look, or to the king, queen, whatever, saying, hey look, things aren't run as they should. You have 40 days to remedy them, otherwise we're going to take over, and whatever. So, you know, I'll do a video on that later. It's arguable either way that either Clause 61 exists or that it doesn't. It's not in the current version of the UK Parliament, but that's beside the point. Oiram says, my message to Dan the Man, you allowed the effing Black Lives Matter protests in Melbourne. You created a crime to the American people, promoted the left agenda against the Trump administration. Lee says, I do not consent to stupidity. You know, literally, if the government said tomorrow in Victoria, or Victoriastan, or Melbourneistan, or whatever, you know, one of the old Russian Soviet Socialist Republic places, hey look, we found a cure for COVID, and what you have to do is kill yourself, which of course I'm not advocating, of course hopefully no one else would, but how many stupid people would actually do it? You know, maybe half the population. George Carlin, the great American comedian, pointed out that, I'm trying to remember his exact words, and it's starting to rain on me as well, but he said something like, imagine someone of average intelligence, you know, and they're pretty stupid, and then just imagine half the population is less intelligent than that. He might have swore a little bit when he was saying that, but you get the idea. Yeah, so Lee points out, I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. So that was from a movie called The Network, which is a cool movie. I've not seen the whole thing, but, you know, I've seen over many years the clip going around. So basically they've got a news presenter and he's sick of all the lies and whatever. This is my understanding from what I've seen of the little clips. And then he is live on air and he's like, I'm as mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore, everyone go to your windows and shout it out. And then the networks were going to cut him off, but they actually liked it because, again, they were controlling people, because people started yelling out, opening their windows, and I'm as mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. Tristan says, thanks mate, hopefully we all come together and stand strong. Yep, hopefully. Clayton says, what are my thoughts on the deagle.com site? According to that, the Australian population will drop to 15 million by 2025. So that is a very old website. I think that was around maybe 20 years ago or something like that. It is not a government website. It is just like, you know, if you make a website and you say the Chinese population is going to be 5 people in 50 years' time. And a deagle, for those that don't know, is short for Desert Eagle, which is an Israeli handgun. I think it's supposed to be the most powerful handgun in the world. And, you know, like big bullets. Pew! So, that's my thoughts on that. And then also, you know, fear is a very big problem for people. It's like, who was that? Rudyard Kipling had a saying that was something like, again, I'll probably stuff up the saying, but it was something like, a real leader is someone who doesn't lose their mind or lose their head when everyone running around them is losing their heads. Because, you know, the government, the media is keeping us in a constant state of fear. Then we make mistakes. We do, you know, bad actions or whatever. You have people like, if people recall, maybe in about 1999 or something like that, there was a cult in the USA called Heaven's Gate. And basically, there was a comet going past, and it was called Hale-Bopp Comet. And I think it comes, you know, every 80 years or 90 years, 60 years, whatever. And their cult leader said, hey, look, we all need to kill ourselves or need to die when this comet's going by, because that way we'll travel to heaven, because it's Heaven's Gate, it's like a spaceship. And that's where you get the saying, don't drink the Kool-Aid from, unless that was another cult that was similar, where they poisoned the literally Kool-Aid, which is like cordial. And you had all these people, you know, killing themselves, which obviously wasn't very helpful. And, you know, it wasn't the end of times, and because they feared so much and were tricked into this magical, you know, place in heaven or whatever, then they did something really stupid. And of course, no one's advocating any violence or anything like that. Now the comments magically have reappeared that disappeared before. So there's apparently a satanic cult conference in Noosa. Interesting. The freedoms we've had that have been taken from us, Clayton says. Sharon says, a lot of doctors are speaking out about bloody time, indeed. And, you know, another problem with that, again, fear. Doctors get disbarred from practice. They lose, you know, their incomes, their Ferrari, their nice house, that kind of thing, for speaking the truth. And really the doctors should be out there, as lawyers should be really too, defending our rights. But, you know, you do have these licensing practicing boards that are little tyrannies in themselves. We've seen that with Dr. Peace in Victoria, I put to you. So it was Rise Up Melbourne. Joe put the status update that I said about before, finding out about Fanos and someone else apparently being arrested, which I assume is Raphael, but I haven't received confirmation of that yet. So Tanya, Seema. Seema's a cool name. It makes me think of Finland. I assume you're not Finnish with a surname like that, but it makes me think of Finland. And also of Patriot Campers or Patriot Games, where, what does Seema make? Seema might make radios or something like that. Hi Tanya, I do know that Karen wanted to speak to me. So after she apparently put the message out, I got contacted by 6 different people. For the first 3, I gave my phone number and asked them to pass that on to her, and I've not heard from her. I don't know if it's because I also told those first 3 people that Karen actually blocked me because I asked her why she was re-promoting vonk voting, which vonk voting is not real, and, you know, it only helps big parties because basically it makes people suicide their votes. People that are disillusioned with the government, that aren't going to just vote Labor, Liberal, Greens or the Nationals Party. Yeah, little argan oil for my hair. I've tried that. I've used lots of gel and whatever. That's alright, just in case people haven't seen my videos before and they're like, who the hell's this crazy dude with, you know, clown hair? Looks like the Joker. Maybe I should make my hair green and paint some little slits on my throat, on my lips or whatever. Just scrolling through. So Tony, I imagine that they're okay, besides having all their equipment taken from them, and also, you know, having bail conditions, being on license, if you want to call it that, if not technically parole, kind of, whatever. So obviously Fanos is probably told that he either has to, you know, tell people not to go to the protest, or that he cannot use social media, say, for the next few days, something like that, I imagine. So back just a second. So Robert says a special kind of stupid, so I don't know who that's referring to. Myself maybe, Fanos maybe, who knows. Mary says I'm awesome. Lee at the damn post office, as it's the anchor to our country. Jace is saying ADF, uphold the Constitution and your oath, arrest the traitors. Oh, my legs are going to sleep, but at least it stopped raining on my head. It was slightly raining, just spitting. John does a clown face, probably because of my clown hair. Woo. You know, clowns have big shoes, and what does big shoes mean? You got something else that's big. Ha 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 ha. Raymond says absolutely. Clayton, there's only one person over the government, and that's the Queen. So far she's done nothing. And yeah, so obviously the Governor General can do something too, but you know, will they bother doing that? Who knows? Tony's saying that the Queen's been dethroned. I don't believe that at all. I believe that, you know, you've got various people claiming that they're the King of England. So you have Joseph Gregory Hallett. He claims that he is the descendant of Anne Boleyn, who had her head chopped off. I actually stuck my head on a block that she or one of King Henry VIII's other wives had her head chopped off. One of them was chopped off with a sword, and I forget which one's which. I think Anne Boleyn got the block, which I stuck my head on. It's in the White Tower or Tower of London, whatever. Don't remember the name exactly. But it's just like on a grass area, and they've got this block, and then one of my older brothers told me, hey, stick your head on there so you can take a picture. So I stuck my head on a block that literally had a Queen's head chopped off. So that was interesting. And you also have like King Steve, that's Stephen Spires, or Stephen Spears as some people call him, but I've been corrected that it's Spires, claiming that he's a king. And, you know, we had people like Juha Kiskinen, who, when he's not sending me pictures of testicles being punched with Rambo music, which I don't know if they were his, then he went off the rails and didn't like me anymore. And I don't know why he sent me that video footage, but, you know, he was going around doing these videos for Kingdom of Australia saying, hey, look, change your allegiance, swear allegiance to King Steve. This is very paraphrased, and he will protect you, that republicanism is stupid because you need a monarch to protect you, so, you know, swear allegiance to King Steve. What did King Steve do to keep Juha out of prison when he got arrested a few weeks ago, or maybe a couple of months ago now, for allegedly saying in a video that the police need to swear allegiance to King Steve or get their necks broken? I.e. that they would be treasonous and then executed for treason. So Mary says, thank you, I'm in Queensland, bring on the 5th. Yep, so I'm just reiterating my own protest is on the 5th as well, from 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. It might finish at 12 p.m. really, and that way people have time to go to the Brisbane protest, which I'm got nothing to do with the Brisbane protest, but you know, I can help them out even if they got some a-holes running it, but that's beside the point. The point is that despite some people being a-holes, it's like Michael Sims in Sydney, who's a very big a-hole and threatens me on Facebook, and of course I have screenshots, but now he's defaming me on my Arjay Martins for Australians page with 2 different accounts, and then calling me a liar and all this other stuff. But you know, he's an a-hole, but you got to look besides them being a-holes, that the bigger picture is, hey, we've got to stand up for this country. We've got to stand up for Australia, technically a self-governing colony, as per covering clause 8 of the Constitution. But, you know, it's not just about, well, it shouldn't really be about personalities at all. As someone else said earlier, you know, we shouldn't have leaders, really. We should make ourselves leaders, because that way, you know, we can't be misled, as an example. It does help to have a bit of coordination, though. Peter says, nailing it, RJ, excellent TINLA, chase truth. Hi, Pete. I think you're out of retirement now, aren't you? Anyway, then Sharon thinks the fake queen's been executed by POTUS, so I don't think so. And Queen Elizabeth II is the queen. There's, you know, there was a document by Tony Robinson, a few years ago that claims that back in the day, one of the King Edwards was away for a long time, so he was off fighting the French, and his wife conceived a baby in his absence, so therefore the real king is Michael Abernathy, something like that, who's actually an Australian farmer. He then died, and then his son would be the king. But the point is, you know, anyone can be king or queen if you can convince the military to back you up. And, you know, it doesn't really help if it's half the military, because, you know, then there's just civil war. So basically all authority comes from the power of the gun, or the power of the sword before that. So, you know, if you can convince everyone in an army to follow you, or the police at least, or something, or the Governor General, then, you know, maybe you can have a crack. I don't think it'll happen, but, you know, you can try it. I'm not encouraging that, of course, because then, you know, someone might claim that that's sedition, but, you know, I'm just talking about philosophically. So Monique says, freedom is gone, we now live in North Korea. No, I think they've probably got more freedoms in North Korea. You know, do they have a curfew that they can only go out for 1 hour a day from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m, as they do in Victoria? In Queensland, it's not quite that bad. I'm in Queensland at the moment. So Jay says, our sovereign land must not be given away by traitors. So you got another thing there, that, you know, you can't own a single piece of land in China or Japan or a lot of other places, but they can own land here. It's no reciprocity. It shouldn't be like that. Just skipping through some comments. Where are we to go to from here? From Jonathan. So what I'm personally doing is I have put in for authorised peaceful assemblies for Saturday, as well as for some other Saturdays into the future, including all the way to April the 3rd, one day before my birthday. And basically the police have 5 days to oppose that. If they don't oppose it, there are authorised protests. For some of the versions I have for 31 participants, for others I have 100 participants. The current COVID restrictions, last time I checked for Queensland, outside of Brisbane and Ipswich and, you know, Logan City or whatever, is 30 people. For Brisbane, etc., it's 10 people at the moment, the last time I checked, which was a few days ago. But, you know, my peaceful assembly is asking for more people than that. I am also putting in for COVID rule exemptions or COVID direction exemptions with Dr. Jeanette Young, which I assume, just like last time, you know, I'm still waiting since April for these COVID direction restrictions to be exempt from them. But anyway, so the police have until Friday to oppose it, and by oppose it, they have to have it go through a real mediation and then go to court, the magistrate's court, and then the court can have jurisdiction to hear if I can have an authorised protest or authorise it with conditions, or to not allow an authorised protest, in which case you can still protest, unless the magistrate buggers up the law or some other particular method. But anyway, so if they do oppose it, then I can argue in court, in the magistrate's court, if it's a fair magistrate, that the COVID directions in Queensland are not law. So therefore, literally, it might be overturned by a single magistrate in a magistrate's court. They might try and do something tricky like say, hey, look, we've got to reserve the question for the Supreme Court or something like that. They can do that. But if it's not blocked, then it's an authorised protest. Therefore, there's acquiescence and people should be left alone. I still think it's advisable for people to bring food, and, you know, I'm doing it at Surfers Paradise near the Surfers Paradise sign, between that and a big ugly red sculpture. And, you know, why not bring a towel, bring your bikini, bring swimming togs, whatever. If you see me getting arrested or beaten up by the police, then, you know, just don't worry about it and go hang out at the beach, whatever. But I'm doing it at 11 o'clock so that people can go to that and then go to the Brisbane one as well. So Peter's watch party is censored by Facebook, he's been told. It's a first for me, so presumably he must have put a watch party for this video. I'm being heavily censored. It happened for the 2019 federal election as well, and I can't join groups even if I'm invited to them. I can't post in groups that I'm not a moderator or administrator of. Sometimes it pops up saying I can't do normal posts. I can't post, you know, certain other things. And, you know, magically I declare myself as a candidate for the seat of Surfers Paradise for the Queensland state election, and then all of a sudden I'm censored again. And, you know, that's completely ridiculous, and Facebook should be punished for that. They shouldn't be doing that. It's actually illegal under both state and federal law in Australia. It's election interference or interference with political liberty. Especially when it's coming up to an election. The election's on the 31st of October, which is coming up, and obviously a little person like me, a little, you know, political party needs to spread the word via word of mouth. But I post things and people say, hey, I can't see the link, whatever, and I post showing that it's like the video I did 2 days ago or whatever it was. And it's just me speaking and whatever, but I'm being censored, and I'm not telling people to break the law. I'm not doing anything like that. I know a bit about the law, and, you know, I wouldn't be so stupid to do that, among other things. So there's some more YouTube videos. I don't know what that's about. So Lee says, because if I click the YouTube videos, it'll bugger this video up, and yes, I will live stream the protest, my one on Saturday, and then if I get to the Brisbane one and have some battery left, then I'll do that as well. And Lee suggests wear a hat, bandana, water, CB radio, communication, first aid, more water, clothes washers, pepper spray, tear gas. Okay then, so one video I saw today or yesterday suggested, and it was a US video about, you know, tear gas, and I guess it was a pro Black Lives Matter protest lady and Amnesty International, blah blah blah, But supposedly, if you get a bandana and you soak it in lemon juice and put it over your mouth, if they use tear gas on you, then it neutralizes the chemicals. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I do know that milk of magnesia is used for capsicum spray, to wash out people's eyes, that kind of thing. Hopefully the police don't do that. Hopefully the police realise that they're supposed to be protecting the people and defending the people, not, defending tyrants and enforcing invalid, unjustified law. A problem is a lot of people be like, hey, but you're going to kill grandma, which is a load of garbage. But, there are cures that are suppressed, and it's finally coming out now that hydroxychloroquine, for an example, that the studies made to discredit that have started being retracted. So we did have the Liberal MP Craig Kelly, who's a New South Wales MP, maybe he's a senator, it's starting to rain again, but he came out and did a great speech saying, hey, look, with the study that had hydroxychloroquine killing people, it was 4 to 6 times was a recommended dose or lethal dose. And also another thing he didn't say is it wasn't used with zinc, but that basically there was the author of that particular study got questioned, and they said, why did you pick 2,400 milligrams or 2.4 grams? And the person said, oh, well, because the drug is used for treating amoebas at that rate or something like that. But it was actually a different drug, which sounds similar, which is hydroxyquinoline, not hydroxychloroquine, which is a different drug. And then he quotes a Professor Perron, who said something like, hey, look, in all of my 40 years of research, I've never seen such a buggered up, this is very, very paraphrased, of course, and he probably spoke French saying it, but such a ridiculous rigged study that it's completely ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. Matthew's asking, am I aware of Know Your Rights group? And would I take legal advice from their legal books and CDs? So the Know Your Rights group was actually working with Rod Cullerton to make the Great Australian Party. I was the lead Senate candidate endorsed by the Great Australian Party for the 2019 election. My take on Know Your Rights, Mike Palmer, is that sometimes they have really brilliant gems of information, and then other times they let themselves down with fake laws, such as about, you've got the Sesquiqui V Trust and strawman stuff like that. But I already have a Doctor of Law, so a type of that, which is Juris Doctor. There are different types of Doctor of Law. There's like 8 different types, even though people only really know about, Juris Doctor and LLD, which you can actually do LLD on top of a Juris Doctorate, or you can also do a PhD in law too, technically. But there's also like Doctor of Ecclesiastical Law and Doctor of this, that. But, I'm sure some of their material is good and some's not, and I'm sure that they, hopefully, I did hear them say once that this is not legal advice. They should always say that or similar, because otherwise they can get themselves into a lot of trouble, because in Australia you must be either a solicitor or a barrister to provide legal advice under Legal Professions Acts of each state and territory, and you have like barristers' rules and solicitors' conduct rules and whatever. But, some of their stuff is accurate, some's not, is a summary, in my humble opinion, or learned opinion. So Carrie's got an article that's saying police have been confirmed as a contracted independent service. So that would be interesting to read. Again, I think that is a misinterpretation. So basically, I haven't read that article, which I can later. But basically there's a lot of terminology that people misinterpret within the law. So a lot of it comes from a guy called David Wynn-Miller, who was a welder, a boilermaker, we would say in Australia, in the USA, who claimed, among other things, that he was immortal. He actually claimed that he had a kidney surgery when he was, say, 20 years old, something like that. You can actually watch these videos. I do have them preserved somewhere for when I finally make a David Wynn-Miller video. And basically he said he had a kidney surgery and hasn't aged a day since. And then obviously the audience, because he was doing seminars, getting paid lots of money for it, I imagine, you know, $100, $200 a ticket or something like that. He also, similar to Know Your Rights, had legal books or whatever, but probably for a lot more money. But he, when he's giving this speech and says he hasn't aged a single day, then obviously people must have been groaning or looking at him like, what the hell's he on about? Because it was like a 45-year-old man when he's saying it. So then he says, oh, maybe one day. So if you don't age, then you're immortal. And therefore, if he's immortal, then how come he died? But he came up with a lot of these concepts, or popularised them, like about the straw man, your all caps name, dog Latin, made popular again Black's Law Dictionary, things about you have, you know, a birthing certificate, and a berth is where a ship goes, so therefore you're a ship, and that's why you got citizenship. So it's basically just fun word games. It's like some people say that ab means not, or not from, so aboriginal means not from original. It doesn't mean that at all. If you look up an etymological dictionary, which is a dictionary that says how words get made or where they come from, it comes from the word aborigine, which is Latin for original inhabitant. But because, and then the other dopey thing is, some people say in means the opposite of what you're talking about. So invalid means not valid. So indigenous means not digenous, whatever digenous means in itself, which is a bit silly. Jace is talking about the PCR test. PCR's polymerase chain reaction. So basically, and they use reverse transcriptase, so RT-PCR, and basically that amplifies whatever's in your container, so you can get enough of it to measure it. So there's doubts about, you know, the testing, in other words. Oh, one other interesting thing. Someone claimed to me, this is like breaking news or whatever, someone claimed that people from army bases in far north Queensland are being brought to Melbourne for this weekend. So I don't know if that's true or not, and I do think that is very interesting. Yeah, so Lizzie says it's an Epping and Coburg man, so I don't know if Raphael's from Coburg. Fanos says in many of his videos that he's from Epping. So Lee says they're not the leaders, and then laughing, crying symbol. Mary says, I'm a freedom hero. Thank you for what I do for the people. Thank you very much, Mary. Jace, gulag is the right word. Bolsheviks are behind this. Yep. So what happened to Fanos is that he got arrested, and someone else did too, for incitement, and apparently he's been released, and I assume the other person is Raphael. So just to reiterate, and then I'll try and quickly scroll through. So Mary says about Magna Carta and Bill of Rights. Yes, the Bill of Rights is law in Australia. Again, that's subject for another video, because when I make controversial videos, you know, you can argue until you're blue and black in the face to certain constitutional professors or whatever that we have a Bill of Rights and it is the law, but they will say it's not. But a problem is that a lot of people don't like what the law is, in terms of it says that Protestant Christians have the right to bear arms, that all promises of fines and forfeiture without prior conviction are illegal and void, as an example. And I tried using that for an unlawful ticket I received, by the police many years ago, and the Magistrates Court at Toronto, so technically it's a local court for New South Wales, but the local court at Toronto said, what did they say exactly? Something like, the Constitution doesn't apply here, you go to the High Court, which is wrong. The Constitution itself, in so-called Covering Clause 5, says that it applies to all courts, judges, everyone in Australia, basically, just to summarise. Jay says Gates is behind the Facebook fact-checkers. Yeah, so it's not just fact-checkers that censor me, it's Facebook itself. Article 61 exists, Susan says. All imperial laws are untouchable. Ronnie says that's really correct. And again, that's for a longer video, like I was saying about the Bill of Rights, because to give credibility to what I say, so it's not just like some crackpot saying something, or, you know, someone that doesn't know what they're talking about despite holding a Juris Doctorate law degree. But, you know, I have my long format videos, so it's basically 20 minutes of me getting to the point, and then 40 minutes of explanations, references, case authorities, legal authorities, that kind of thing, because that way High Court judges can watch my video and go, hey, look, he's right. I actually looked that up and he's actually right. And I do know of one High Court judge that has watched some of my TINLA videos, which is Michael Kirby. I met him once at Bond University, which is where I completed my Juris Doctorate. I also, sorry about the cars, having a little race there or something, but I also had dinner with another High Court judge who was just like, you know, probably 40 people or something in a room, and that was Kiefel, Susan Kiefel. She's the Chief Justice of the High Court, and again, that was at Bond University. I used to do little meetings once a month too, and invited people to, you know, go meet Michael Kirby. Some people don't like him, some people do like him. That's beside the point. Kathy says everyone should get off of Facebook, close it down. Yeah, so, you know, that might work, but a problem is people have become accustomed to chatting to people like they do, and even if you go to things like MeWe or whatever, how many of your friends are actually on there, and how user-friendly is it? You know, Facebook could be really good if it wasn't for them deplatforming people like myself, and again, I don't commit any crimes, I don't tell people to commit crimes or anything like that. They're just doing it to be a bunch of scumbags, and because they see that their platform can be used as, you know, to even a playing field against the multi-billion dollar, you know, taken over years, political parties, so they just deplatform, which is terrible. And I'm not, you know, a right-wing extremist or a left-wing extremist. I'm a centrist. I believe that, you know, all sides and all groups have good and bad things to contribute to politics or to government or whatever, but you still, you know, have me getting deplatformed with the previous election and this one. They keep censoring me. The comments are flicking through, so I'm missing some, and it won't let me scroll up, but I did see someone ask, is it illegal to refuse a test? So this video's already gone on for quite a long time, so it would take a long time to answer that, but it depends on the circumstances and situation and whatnot as well. So just say if, how can I put it? So I'll just stay with very general concepts. So for medical law, you do have the concept of fully informed consent. For the Constitution itself, under section 51, subsection 23A, you have that the government, and this applies to all levels of government, can provide dental and medical services so long as it does not constitute civil conscription. You also have, you know, it's very different in the circumstances if someone, just say, is dying of black plague, bubonic plague, and then they are trying to leave quarantine, and then the government says, hey, we're going to make sure you aren't sick, because that actually is a really deadly disease. And, you know, we don't have hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin that can cure it in 48 hours by inhibiting the reproduction of the virus, which, you know, you have the likes of Professor Barodi in Australia supporting ivermectin. And there's a lot of studies now supporting hydroxychloroquine, and there were some now discredited studies saying that hydroxychloroquine was actually deadly, and it turned out they were based on garbage. There's some little flowers, some wattle. No, take a sprig of wattle with you to the protest if you want. Anyway, I'll try and quickly scroll through these. Yeah, so Kathy says about Sol being arrested. Jeff asking what happened to Fanos. He got arrested and charged with incitement, and that's an indictable offence. Lee keeps talking about my hair. It's funny. Craig says he got arrested and raided. Leanne, hi. Kenny says my brains have gone to sleep. It's cool. You know, people can debate me if they want. They can say I'm wrong. They can do whatever. That's fine. So much disinformation, that's right. And that's a big problem too, because that can get people into a lot of trouble. Anyone else arrested? Lynette. There was one other person who was arrested today that I know of for the protests on Saturday. My one is 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. at Surfers Paradise on Saturday, and then people can go to the Brisbane one after, or hang out at the beach or whatever. Christy says Gregory Hallett is a fraud, false prophet. Indeed, I suggest that he is untruthful, at least. Clayton says Antoinette got her head chopped off. Yes, but also so too did Anne Boleyn and one of Henry VIII's other wives. One was chopped off on a block, and another one was chopped off with a sword. Apparently she was running away, and they whoo-choo when she's running. So Teresa says we're all queens and kings. I'm only a queen on Sunday nights. Some people like the joke, others won't. We are the crown, Jace says. That's not actually accurate. I know there's a lot of people that say we're the crown, or that the crown is the government. The High Court claims it's the executive branch of government. That's actually false. Even though they're the High Court, they're wrong. Then other people say that, like Max Egan says, and I like Max, but, you know, not all of the information's correct, that the Crown is the City of London. You also have Wayne Glue. Again, you know, he has some really good information, but also has some incorrect information. Says that the Crown is God. The Bible doesn't refer to God as a crown anyway. The only crowns it refers to is the top of your head. And then again, I was going to do a separate TINLA video. I guess I have to do little clip ones anyway to keep people interested, because not many people like our long videos. But the crown is actually defined in section 30 of the Interpretation Act, Imperial, from 1889, just 1 year before the Australian Constitution, or Commonwealth Constitution, if you want to call it that, if you take offence at calling it Australian, was made. And it specifically says something along the lines of all references to the crown shall mean the reigning monarch, unless it's absolutely necessary. This is paraphrased. So if there's a law saying you can't steal the king's crown, then obviously that doesn't mean you can't steal the king's king. It means you can't steal the physical crown. Or if there's a law saying, you know, you cannot hit someone in the crown, with a mallet, i.e., whack him in the head with a big hammer, then that too obviously refers to the crown of the head. So I will have to scroll through the comments a little bit quicker. So Susan says the Queen's in Scotland. Maybe the Queen is retreating from coronavirus. Who knows? Donna says we need to unite as one. So sure, but again, the problem is that if the leaders or whatever are compromised or incorrect in some aspects, and that makes a problem. Lee says Victoria is a prison state. Yeah, isn't it funny? Australia was settled, if you want to call it that, by a lot of prisoners from the UK. So in the UK, they had so many prisoners. They had these big ships in the water that was sort of half leaky called hulks in the middle of the Thames. They took over America, the USA, settled America, colonised it, whichever way you want to call it, and Canada as well. And you had the British North American Act as an example. And then North America said, no, we don't want you convicts anymore. So Australia got the convicts. And of course, they are arresting people for everything and anything. Someone told me the other day, I don't know if it's accurate or not, but that they would just cordon off a whole block of people and say, hey, you're all under arrest, and send them to Australia, because they needed to populate Australia so that the Russians and the French and the Germans wouldn't get here. So isn't it funny? We went from a convict country, or convict colonies, to, again, being prison states. So that's pretty funny. It's not really funny, though, when you consider it's people's lives. But it would be funny if it's like as a joke or whatever. But unfortunately, it's not a joke. It's what's really happening. And Ian says, keep spreading COVID so I don't have COVID to spread it. Ian. So, that's a bit silly of a comment. And then if I was having it, then I could take ivermectin for 48 hours. And then I'll get rid of my COVID, because ivermectin, like hydroxychloroquine and some other things that a lot of people probably haven't heard of, like there's alternative cellular energy, means that COVID would disappear. Then I would not be infected and then not be able to spread it. Jace points out about event 201, as they call it, or 201. That it went live. There are a lot of exercises that go live, and you got lockstep as well, blah blah blah. 100 person, it's a trial state. Thanks for my knowledge from Leanne. Thank you, Leanne. I say percent, Donna said. Film the protests, yes, so I will. Just scrolling through. Ian says, don't come to Brisbane, we don't need you at all. Why come here? Why not go there, Ian? That's where Parliament is. That's where parliamentary decisions get made. That's where, they allow stupidity such as the banning of hydroxychloroquine for political reasons. So, why not go to Brisbane? Do you own Brisbane? Is it yours? And, you can just stay at home for the time that people are protesting. So, you've got that option. It's funny because the pub behind me is called Options. I just went to go get some shopping, so... Just scrolling through. Yeah, so Ian appears to be, paranoid that everyone's going to spread disease to him. And, as I said before, a problem is that people don't make good decisions when they're so fearful. We've had months of fear pumped into us if you watch TV or read newspapers or whatever. And unfortunately, it doesn't allow people to make good decisions. how many of you actually know someone that has actually died of COVID, as an example? In the USA, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, just came out and admitted that only 6% of so-called COVID deaths are those without comorbidities. So a comorbidity is, hey, look, you're going to die of XYZ, just say you got stage 4 cancer and you got a week to live, and then you die with COVID, so that's a comorbidity. So then it's counted as a COVID death, but it's not a real COVID death. In the UK, they just redefined what a COVID death was, and even though it is dying with COVID still, and they got the garbage where if someone has symptoms of COVID, i.e., a snotty nose, and they die, and they haven't even been tested for it, that it's deemed a COVID death, which is completely ridiculous. But in the UK, they literally just deducted 5,004 people from COVID deaths, because they redefined it that it was if you tested positive for COVID or was suspected of having COVID at any time, even if it was 2 months before, 3 months before, 5 months before, then you were classed as a COVID death. So they redefined it to put a 28-day cutoff period. So if people were diagnosed with COVID, 30 days before, and then they died of a car accident, it was no longer counted as a COVID death. So they just minus 5,000 people. And in the USA, as I said, it's only 6% of the people. In Italy, we had Professor Ricciardo, who came out back in April or March or something like that, saying that 97% from memory of people that died in Italy with COVID disease, so COVID is the actual disease, of course, coronavirus disease, 2019, or COVID-19, and the actual virus is SARS-CoV for coronavirus 2. SARS-CoV-1 was SARS. And you also had MERS and whatever, which was Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome and Sudden Acute Respiratory Syndrome. But anyway, so 97% of Italian COVID deaths back then were people that died with comorbidities, i.e. they probably died of a car accident or a cancer, or they were in palliative care or something like that. So my point, Diane, is that people, there'll be a lot of people that are so scared that they think, hey, look, sure, you have the right to protest, but I have the right to live, and you're going to kill me or my grandma. But it's all garbage, basically. So JC's pointing out Act of 1666, so that's a Sesquiquivir Act, and, nothing in that says that we're all dead at sea and blah, blah, blah. What that was about was you had the plague and then the Great Fire of London, and there were a lot of people that drowned in the Thames, and then it was like, hey, look, if people don't come back after 7 years, then we're going to distribute their property, their inheritance. So Christie's asking what the heck censored someone's on about. I don't know if it's what I'm on about or what someone else is. So can't argue with a Karen. So that's a racial term, Ian. Don't be racist. Karen's a disparaging term from the USA, saying that all white women are self-entitled. So it's racist and sexist. So you shouldn't be racist or sexist. Just scrolling through before I bugger off. So Ian likes talking a lot. Ian is doing a protest by protesting on my wall. So anyway, yeah, so that'll probably do. You've probably got hundreds of messages to scroll through. I can't tell, but I'll look at them afterwards. So anyway, bye, cheerio. So remember, my protest is at Surfers Paradise, near the Surfers Paradise sign, 11 a.m. till 1 p.m, might finish earlier. It is recommended that people, if they wish to participate, and of course you are responsible for yourselves, but, bring water, food, beach towel if you want, your bikini if you want, your swimsuit, budgie smugglers, whatever. If you want to go hang out at the beach afterwards, have a picnic, whatever. Also, that gives people time to go to the Brisbane protest. And please like, share, subscribe. You can send me a donation if you like at paypal.me/Arjay Martin. That's ARJAYMARTIN. I also have a donation page on GoFundMe if you type in COVID-19 space 84 court case. That is to indemnify me for taking things to court to try and get rid of the COVID directions. And then Jace, just so I bookmark where I'm up to for the comments, Jay says about a baby crowning, so therefore you're sovereign. Doesn't mean that. The crown is the top of your head, so crowning is your head pops out of the lady bits. But anyway, so I'll look at the comments later and maybe write to a couple of people or answer some questions or whatever. Anyway, cheerio. Woo!